Hello, and welcome to episode number 26 of the PINNED Podcast. I'm your host, PinUp Miami, and at the PINNED Podcast, we talk about modern topics with a vintage flair. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If it's your first time or listening to us on the podcasting stations, I appreciate that you clicked. I hope you like and subscribe and listen for more. And if you are returning, I want to say thank you so much. It means so much that you're listening. And a special thank you to everyone that reached out to me on last week's episode. It was all about me episode because it was my birthday week. And I want to say thank you all for listening in and donating. All the donations that I've gotten go right back into my craft and to making more content for you guys. And I really appreciate it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And make sure that you follow the PINNED Podcast at the PINNED Podcast Official on Instagram if you haven't already, and my personal Instagram, PinUp Miami. And if you feel sassy enough, you can send me a text to 1-833-4A-PinUp. It could be anything that you want on the show, any guest suggestions. Anything is really appreciated, even a joke. And before we get started with an amazing guest that I have for you today, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see him on the screen. But I am going to talk about today's sponsor for the episode. It is Arteluna Miami. If you guys love this headpiece that I'm wearing, if you're watching on YouTube, or you could catch her on Instagram at Arteluna Miami. She's the sponsor of today's episode, and she creates beautiful headpieces that are both floral and based on her art. She's a local artist in Miami, and all her art is very bright, like a burrito style. She does earrings, purses, everything hand painted. So make sure to check her out. And her website is artelunamiami.com. And I will put her info in the link below. Now, today's guest is Simon Cantlon from Vive Le Rock Productions and the producer of Rockabilly Festival. He is an extraordinary man, has done so much in his life. And he even was nominated for an Emmy. I learned this. Yep. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I had the pleasure of hosting the PinUp contest when you had the Rockabillaque here in Florida earlier this year. It feels like forever ago, but earlier this year.
Yeah, it does seem like a lifetime ago, honestly. Like it really does.
So you have a very impressive history, Simon. Is there can you give us a little synopsis or bio for my listeners?
Sure. I've been working in the entertainment industry for 20-something years. I worked in digital media, marketing, record labels. I worked for different TV shows, including American Idol, So You Think You Can Dance, Dexter, Californication, and about 42 other TV shows. A lot of them you probably haven't heard of or don't want to hear from. There was a lot of stinkers in those mixes as well. And I worked with music artists, everything from a lot of American Idol artists, obviously, like Carrie Underwood, and but even like the Spice Girls and Annie Lennox and stuff like that. I also worked for Elvis Presley Enterprises because of my last sort of corporate job in the entertainment industry. I've done a lot of different stuff related. I've just done as much as I can in the industry to get as much experience as possible. And then when I turned 40, I left everything behind and traveled the country for a year and decided to settle in Charleston, South Carolina, where I now produce festivals and events and do marketing and social media branding and all that stuff. But yeah, I had the honor of having you involved in Rockabillaque when it came to Florida this year. I keep thinking last year. It does feel like last year. So
I almost had to catch myself. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, no, it does. It seems like a long time ago. Pre-COVID, I did my first year of Rockabillaque in Florida, and that was this past February. But it does seem like a while ago. But it was great, and I'm really excited to do it again. Hopefully, we get to do it next year. Just don't know when yet.
And what got you into rockabilly?
I've always been I've been a huge music fan my whole life, ever since I was a kid. I would start listening to an artist, find out who their influences were, and go and buy the records for the because before that, when I was a kid, there wasn't Spotify and streaming music and all that. You had to actually go to the record store and buy that, or listen to it on the radio and try and record it with a cassette player and try to cut out the DJ so you could get the song. My mom gave me a bunch of her 45s when I was a kid, and I had a little Fisher Price record player, and I gravitated towards a particular 45 probably the most, and it was Gene Vincent's Bebopalula, and I think Woman Love was on the B side. And I loved the Bebopalula. Like, it was just that was my first sort of introduction. But even before Elvis, that was my first introduction to what I guess would be rockabilly music. And I loved it. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. Unfortunately, I pretty much destroyed. I still have the 45, but I pretty much destroyed it because she gave me these 45s when I was like 7 years old, which I kind of like wish she hadn't. But because I pretty much destroyed all of them, playing them, scratching them and playing them on my little. Yeah. And I didn't know how to maintain records and stuff when I was a kid. I was like, that sort of was my first sort of like love of rockabilly music.
And then with Rockabillaque, for somebody that hasn't heard of it, how would you describe it? It's a car show, it's a concert, it's a whole lifestyle brought into one event.
Yeah, it's an experience. Obviously, proper dues need to be paid to the Viva Las Vegas was the sort of the originator of what is the modern day Rockabilly Festival, and that was definitely a huge influence. If anybody who puts on these events says it wasn't, then they'd be lying. So I took it and made it my own, but it's an outdoor event that has classic cars, vintage motorcycles, pinups, rockabilly music, honky tonk. It has different various contests, including tattoo and beard and mustache. It has vendors. It has dancing. It's a whole day of fun-filled day of action-packed fun. And, the thing about it, too, is that my particular festivals are free. And no one else that I know of is doing a Rockabilly festival for free in the United States. And there's nothing wrong with ticketing it. Honestly, it makes better business sense. But I like the idea of doing a free event. I like the idea that people can come and they just can come enjoy the day. They don't have to spend any money if they don't want to. Hopefully, they get some food and drinks and buy some t-shirts and stuff. If they don't, they get to see some great live music and, see some fun things like the pinup contest and, see people dancing or dance themselves or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely, I try to make it an experience that people walk away from and want to come back again year after year.
Ooh, and Simon, do you sing or dance? Do you have any hidden talents?
I'm more of a behind the scenes guy. I don't mind getting on stage and stuff, but I definitely I like to be behind the scenes. I let other people that are bring their talents to shine and be in the spotlight. That's more. I want to shine the spotlight on people, and and let them do their thing. That's my thing. I
have two questions from Instagram that have to do with the Charleston Rockabillaque. How is it working with the city? Is it complicated or?
No, the city loves it. In fact, the mayor of North Charleston, where I do the festival, and Rockabillaque in Charleston is now in this would have been the 8th year. So next year will be the 8th year. And I do it in the neighborhood of Park Circle, which is a neighborhood in North Charleston, South Carolina, which is part of Charleston. And it is a mid-century neighborhood, has a little main street with restaurants and bars and breweries. And we closed the whole neighborhood down, and the city loves it. The mayor actually it's his favorite event, unofficially, of course, but it's his favorite event of the year. And he has about 20 classic cars that he keeps in a warehouse. And he brings out about 4 to 6 classic cars every year to be in the festival. And he has a particular spot, and he gets it every year. And he even did a promo video last year for the festival, like showing off his cars and talking about how much he loves mid-century culture and everything. Yeah, so it helps when the mayor is a fan of your event for sure.
I hope one year I go.
Well, yeah. Hopefully we get you out next year to obviously we had a little stumbling block this year, but hopefully we can get you out there to PinUp contest next year here. So.
And so the Rockabillaque in Charleston has been going on for 8 years.
Yes.
Have you noticed any difference in the community, like a rise in rockabilly?
Yes, for sure. The first year was maybe 2 blocks and we had 1,500, 2,000 people come out. And there was a couple people that dressed up. Other than that, there wasn't a lot of like people getting into it. People loved it. And it was, everyone, that came loved it and told everyone about it. Word of mouth, as you know, word of mouth is a huge thing. And since then we've grown it obviously. And now we closed down most of the neighborhood. We closed down side streets and it's a big endeavor. It's definitely the most unique Rockabillaque because it's in this mid-century neighborhood. The Rockabillaques going forward are going to be at casinos. And actually, my plan is to do about 4 or 5 of them across the country. I just got approved last week for a national trademark for Rockabillaque. So I am hoping in the future to expand, not just have Charleston and Florida, but have them elsewhere as well.
Ooh, that's exciting. And I also love that it's in the East Coast because a lot of the rockabilly culture is always first thing people think about is the West Coast. That's why I loved going to Viva East 3 years ago. I actually won Miss Viva East.
That's right.
And that was a great festival because it was on the East Coast and it's a whole different kind of vibe. And I just love it. And I love the event here. So that's why I can't wait for you to grow and expand because I'll be there.
Yeah, definitely. I have a plan, and I plan to do them in places where I'm not trying to compete with any other rockabilly festivals. They will be in the areas that are not currently like there's nothing in that area that it has to fit the brand, but also I'm excited about expanding it. So I have ideas, but I'm not going to say them all right now.
Congratulations! I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
So why did you decide, because one of the questions was, I'm just going to skip as I go. Why did you pick Florida first to expand? Or was it an opportunity thing?
Well, I had picked Florida because I know somebody that works for the casino who used to live here. And he reached out to me and he was like, we want to do a rockabilly classic car, pinup event here at the casino. And I've been telling the owners about Rockabillaque and how amazing it is and all this stuff. And I would love to work with you to bring it. And that's how it sort of happened. And it was a big success. I mean, like for a first year, I was very impressed by the culture in Florida. Like rockabilly, classic cars, pinups, vintage motorcycle culture is huge in Florida, more so than even in South Carolina. I mean, there's a culture here, but I think a lot of people come to Rockabillaque here because they just enjoy the event. Like they love to just, but in Florida, there's more of a actual like thriving culture. As you know, living there, but so it makes sense. And it kind of opened the door for, I was like, well, casinos fit the branding for sure. And I love, they're a great partner. The Seminole Casino was fantastic to work with, and I look forward to working with them for next year. Obviously, we had to postpone next year's, but we're working to figure out a date. We're waiting to sort of see where things go, But I will tell you that the Rockabillaque in Florida, if it happens in 2022 or 2022, 2021. No. I want it to happen in 2021. I'm not throwing that out there into the universe, but there's some big announcements with it, and it's going to be bigger. That's all I can tell you is that it's definitely going to be bigger. There's plans to expand it in different ways. But we have to sort of wait and see, what the temperature, how things are going and everything. Obviously there's a lot going on, but hopefully this, within the beginning of the year, we can start figuring out and we're able to start planning things again.
Oh, that's so exciting. And you picked it's a perfect spot because most of the South Florida is not that big as West Coast of Florida and Central Florida. So it's like a perfect like little hutch of like everyone being able to meet there. So that's why I like
yeah,
that
exactly.
area.
Yeah, it's not too far of a drive. It's not too far from Miami, and many cities can get there within a couple hours at least. So
yeah, I got to see my Central Florida friends, my West Coast friends. It was
yeah,
good.
definitely. It's a great. I mean, I loved doing that event. I'm excited to do it again. I was just bummed we couldn't do it in February, but obviously, it makes sense. So
yeah. So I want to know about your Elvis Presley Enterprise experience.
So I definitely am obsessed with Elvis. I have a lot of Elvis paraphernalia. I've read a lot of different books and listen. I have a slight obsession with Elvis, and I worked for a British company called 19 Entertainment, and they owned Elvis Presley Enterprises when I worked there. So I got to start diving in, and we actually were developing an app. It never happened, but it was going to be a karaoke app, and I wish it would have happened because it was really cool, because it literally, like, you would have been able to, like, sing along with Elvis, and Elvis was going to, like, perform next to you and stuff. But apps are, a hard thing to develop and get, through to the final stages and all that. But one of the benefits of me doing that is that they found out that I'm a big Elvis fan, and I'd worked on American Idol and all this different stuff. And they asked me to be a judge for the International Elvis Tribute Contest one year for Elvis Week, which is in August. And that's, memorial for his death and all that stuff. And they have a huge celebration, and they do this big contest and all this stuff. And the tribute artists, they compete all over the world for a year, and they pick the best ones, and they come and they compete at the Orpheum Theater in downtown. So I got to come and be a judge for that, which was really, really cool.
Wow.
And but then the next year, they asked me to write the introductory article for Elvis Week's program guide. So I got to write an article about Elvis that was featured in the program guide that literally hundreds of thousands of people saw and read and all that. But they told me I had to write it in a week, so it's definitely not my finest writing efforts. And at the time, I used to produce a festival in New Mexico before Rockabillaque. Well, actually, I started it the same year as Rockabillaque, but it was the original one. It was called Rockabilly On The Route. It was in a little Route 66 town called Tucumcari in New Mexico. And we basically took over the whole town for a week. Like, we had a parade and burnout, and the convention center had shows, and we had shows at diners and barbecue joints and stuff all over town. We sold out every hotel and motel. I mean, it was a ton of fun. But after 5 years, we decided to retire it. It was hard for me because of the distance, and my co-producer didn't want to do events anymore. And it just was like, it had run its course, and 5 years was great. But at the time, it was a week before I had to go to New Mexico to do this event. And it was like, it's a big endeavor. And they basically contacted me, and they're like, we want you to write the feature article, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. Like, we need it in a week. And I was like, oh my God. So I had to, like, pull together this article, and I'm not like a seasoned writer, so it was like, I had to, like, but I had friends that were editors and stuff that helped me kind of craft it. But it was really an honor, and it was very, very cool. That I got to write the feature article, and it's like, the program guide they pass out at the event.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. But I have to say, one of the, like, shivers up my spine moments was because I was there as a judge the year before, they gave us like a private tour of Graceland. I've been to Graceland a million different times, but they let me walk the grounds at night of Graceland by myself. And so this is before the candlelight vigil and all that. So I'm literally walking, around the property, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the land that Elvis walked and lived, and, ran his go-karts and romanced women, and, like, did a million different things. And it was just really cool, because, like, I think he was an amazing artist. So, it definitely, like, made me feel like, like I felt the energy and the presence or whatever. And, it was just a really cool, like, I definitely was a fanboy that day and fanned out like crazy. And I got to be at the beginning of the candlelight procession and go through, all that. And that was really amazing to see all the fans that, come out for that and pay tribute. And it's very moving. I recommend anybody should go to Graceland at least once. It's an all-day experience for one thing. Have you ever been to Graceland?
No, one day I'll go. But I just love seeing
you need to set aside a whole day, because it is literally like, it's not just the house. They have the airplane museum. They have museums for his films. They have the gift shops. They have a theater that shows his movies. They have live music. I mean, it's like, I remember I took a friend, my co-producer in New Mexico, I took her years ago. And I was like, we have to set aside a whole day while we're in Memphis to go to this. It's not just like we're going for like 3 hours. Like and when we were done, she was like, it was literally like 9 o'clock by the time we actually left the grounds or whatever. And we went there at like 10 a.m. in the morning. And she's like, you weren't kidding. Like, this is a full day experience. Like, and then you have to go to the unofficial gift shops too, because that's where you find the really great stuff. Like the official merchandise is great, but you can find, like, I have a pink satin 1980s, we both do, fan club jacket that has like embroidery on the back, and it has the name of the fan club and all that. And me and her bought matching jackets, and we actually wore them they're pink satin, and we wore them to Dollywood, and people there thought we were performers at Dollywood, and they kept hitting me up and asking us about schedules and like, where do we go to find this? We're like, no, we're actually just here to attend Dollywood, yeah. But people literally thought we were performers because we were wearing these shiny pink satin jackets and stuff. So it was really funny. But yeah, and then years before that, I had been working, when I was in college, I worked at a bookstore in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the members of the Memphis Mafia just put out a book called Elvis Presley. And they were doing a little book tour, and they made an appearance at a bookstore in Pittsburgh. And the bookstore I was working at was supplying the books and part of the promotion or whatever. So I immediately requested that I get to be at the event, and I get to help, I bring the books in and I hand them the books to sign and all that. So I got to hang out with the Memphis Mafia for like 4 hours and like go to dinner with them and have drinks with them. And they told me all these stories. And like, I mean, it was amazing. Like, I mean, I was like 23, 24 at the time. And I was literally like, this is amazing. Like, these guys were his best friends, and I'm hanging out with them. And it was really cool. So I've been lucky to get to experience some really cool, like, Elvis stuff,
Oh, my favorite part about this whole story is your face. Like, if you guys are not watching on YouTube, just watch this segment, because he's like bright-eyed, like all bright-eyed and smiling, ear to ear.
Yeah. No, I get really excited about stuff like that. Like, I really geek out. And I have all kinds of I have all kinds of quirky Elvis art. There's this huge, I have a print screen. There's this artist named Mr. Brainwash, which they did a documentary about, and he is a prodigy, apparently like a protege of Banksy, the graffiti artist. Yeah. And he did this movie called Exit Through the Gift Shop. It's a documentary on him and everything. And in his big art exhibit that the documentary is based on was in Los Angeles. And the first 200 people that went to the event got a signed lithograph he actually added some paint elements to it and signed it right then and there. He was this real eccentric character. I highly recommend the documentary. It's called Exit Through the Gift Shop. And his name is Mr. Brainwash. But the lithograph, his art it's a picture of Elvis, probably from, I'm looking at it right now, but probably from one of his cowboy movies from the late 50s. And he's cradling a Fisher-Price machine gun. And and then there's like splatters of paint at the bottom and stuff. But it's like this huge, I might be able to, let's see if we can do a little, I'll show you yeah, here we go. That's it.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so cute.
Yeah, so he's cradling a Fisher-Price machine gun. So he was this sort of well-known graffiti mural artist, and they made this documentary about him and everything. And the whole thing is whether he was Banksy in real life, and this guy was actually like, he's a very eccentric character and stuff. This guy's done album covers. He did Madonna's like greatest hits album cover and stuff. Anyway, so I got to be one of the first 200 people, and I got this print. It's an original, but it actually is numbered and everything.
Wow.
But yeah, so yeah, that's like one of my prized possessions. If there was a fire, that'd probably one of the first things I'd grab.
And you have it right in front of you, so you can see it every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
And do you have any top, if you had to name your top 3 Elvis songs?
Rockahula Baby, Crawfish. These are just ones that pop into my head. Yeah. oh gosh, Heartbreak Hotel, I Want You, I Need You, I Love You. I think I Want You, I Need You, I Love You is one where he talks in the middle. And it's just like makes you like he's like just talking to the woman of his attraction or whatever, and it's just amazing. Yeah, those are probably like some of my favorites.
I love Suspicious Minds.
Suspicious Minds is a classic for sure. There's one that I always forget the name of that's like really, really great. And it's almost like Sinatra-esque, and I'm completely blanking on the name. But anyway, there's a lot. The thing is, I've listened to Elvis for so long that I don't listen to him all the time now, but he's on a million of my mixes and stuff. But it's because the popular stuff I've listened to so much that more like I even like the soundtrack stuff is the more obscure stuff is actually really great. Even when he was doing stuff that was subpar of his talent, it still was amazing. Like artists would do anything to do his subpar material. Like, I mean, like it's even his like weird soundtrack songs are amazing. So, yeah. So I like, like Rockahula Baby or Crawfish or King Creole. I love King Creole. Even Las Vegas is a great song. But yeah, his soundtrack stuff's amazing. Even his 70s stuff is pretty phenomenal. I mean, it gets a bad rap. He wasn't in his best shape of his life or anything, but he did some great stuff. And his voice wasn't at peak form either, but he still did some, great stuff in the 70s.
People wish he was, what would be cool if in the future when technology gets better at Rockabilly Q, you have a hologram of Elvis.
Yeah, just performing. Yeah, well, I'd have to go through the estate on that. That's not an easy task. So, yeah.
Well, it could be like a dream. It could be a dream one day, be like
for sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, my dream job is the people that it's so geeky, but there's people whose job is to work in the archives, and they go through the archives and they make notes about it, and they figure out where this going to be put out because they rotate installations at Graceland all the time. Because they have a whole department, and it's like 8 people, and their full-time jobs is to go through, and people donate stuff too. Like there's donated stuff to the archives, people pass away and all that. And they get stuff to enter into the archives, they research it, they, make notes about it, they, all this different stuff. And there's this huge, they have like a warehouse just for archives. And the amazing thing about him is that I don't think there was any foresight. He just didn't like to get rid of anything. He had a warehouse even when he was alive. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And literally they just would put stuff in that. Like he would just it was almost like Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was another one who just put things into a warehouse all the time. Yeah. He would literally put in like furniture that when they bought new furniture, the old furniture would go to the warehouse. Like there was all this different stuff. So there was a whole warehouse of stuff. And in fact, when he died, one of the reasons why I'm sorry, I'm going off on this tangent, but you tap into my, so one of the reasons why one of the reasons why Graceland became a museum is because in the early 70s, Colonel Tom Parker, who was, one of the most legendary managers, who was also a SOB and a con artist. And, there's a million things you could say about, Colonel Tom Parker, his manager. But he did a lot of good things too. He helped make Elvis who he was, but Elvis also had a bigger part in that. But the man was a con artist and, do all kinds of things. But one of the things that happened is that by the early 70s, Elvis was pretty much bankrupt. Elvis spent money like no tomorrow. And, he just didn't, there was no, he was buying people cars and flying around on a private plane and, doing all this different stuff. So it got to the point in the early 70s where they were desperate for money. So Colonel Tom Parker made a deal with RCA Records to sell his part of the publishing to them for $2 million. So when Elvis died, there was no money coming in because he wasn't performing. The only way he stayed afloat in the 70s was basically performing and merch and all that kind of stuff. But so the estate was in dire need of if they were going to keep Graceland going and his family in there, they have certain standards of living, Priscilla and Lisa Marie and his father and his cousins and, whoever. And Priscilla's the one who had, I think, the idea of turning it into a museum. And she had the foresight and she should be getting a lot of the claim for it because she really did have the foresight of let's make Graceland into a museum and generate money coming through, because all the publishing money was gone. So the only money they make now is through Graceland merchandise, which obviously is probably a nice chunk of change, publishing after 1972, and that's it. Like, they make nothing else. There's no other money. They don't get any money from anything before that. Like, RCA owns 100% full rights of publishing. And so, but one of the funny things she did was, the furniture that was in there was, a lot of it was his current fiance, who was a beauty queen, who was with him. I'm not going to say she was just with him because she was Elvis, but I mean, he wasn't because he was Elvis, but I don't think it was a real like love story, you know? And there's a whole story about that too. But Priscilla did not want the furniture so the main furniture in like the dining room, living room, and the music room were all pure 70s, like, and they were all decorated by his current girlfriend, fiance. So thankfully he had put all the furniture that Priscilla had decorated with in the storage. So she brought it all back in and turned it back into the 60s. And when she lived there, she's like, if we're turning this into a museum, it's going to be my version of Graceland. Other than the jungle room and the pool room and all that are still pure 70s, which is great because they're so decadent and over the top and everything. But there's a very nice, classy style to the dining room and the living room and the music room, very 1960s. And it's a really cool style. I actually have reproductions of the peacock stained glass they have in the music room hanging in my window. Anyway, so I can go on and on and on about Elvis.
That's awesome. Well, I learned a lot of things. I didn't know all these things about. I didn't know about. Have you ever met Priscilla? That would be cool if you met.
No, but I did work with. We were in the same room together, but in LA, because I worked on American Idol, and she would come to areas and all that. But in LA, you don't, you have to be professional. You don't walk up to talent. Like I worked with all of them. I worked with Jennifer Lopez. I worked with Simon Cowell. I worked with, but I didn't work with them like one-on-one. We worked for the same company. But no, she was there. I just never, I'm not going to bother her. Like she's Priscilla Presley. Like if she wants to talk to me, she can. Otherwise, you leave her alone. But I did have to deal with Lisa Marie's because we managed Elvis Presley Enterprises, we had to deal with everything under the sun. And to show how crazy people are and too much time on their hands, Lisa Marie's assistant would call me 2 to 3 times a week. And because I handled digital media, so I oversaw the content. I developed content for mobile, for behind the scenes, for iTunes, whatever it was we were doing. I sort of oversaw it for 19 Entertainment. And her assistant would call me a couple times a week because there was all these fake profiles coming up on Facebook. Like people put up impersonation profiles, not just for Lisa Marie, but for like her husband, her kids. I was like, who has time to do that? Like, and is there enough of a demand for people to like people were impersonating them online.
Use it for scamming, maybe, or
yes, yeah. Like, oh, you want to book me? Well, here, prepay, blah blah blah. I don't know, but it was just weird. I mean, there was dozens of these pages that we had to yank down, and Lisa Marie was a little bit like people would tell her about it or whatever, and she'd get all upset about it or whatever. And I'm sure it's weird. Like I can't imagine people creating fake profiles of me. My lighting just disappeared. I think I unplugged something.
Someone did that to me. Somebody did that to me on like one of those dating websites. And
oh, randomly, really? Like
somebody kept telling me that they saw me on there.
That's weird. Apparently, I unplugged myself. Give me 1 second. Let me figure out what I did.
No, so I love those stories.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many. I have so many stories on that. So it's kind of crazy.
And I have 2 more questions that I forgot to ask that I can hear.
Sorry for the grainy video footage now, but yeah.
So for Rockabillaque with the bands, a couple people had questions about the bands. Have you had any bands have any crazy demands?
I mean, I probably wouldn't say anything just because I probably have to book them again. So no one. Actually, I have to say for the most part, it's a phenomenal, especially in this community. I have to give a lot of accolades to the bands because they definitely are very supportive of the events that, especially rockabilly events. I think because it's like that's their genre, but they I can't think of anybody that is like, that was really, there's been some crazy stories, but they weren't related. Like so we booked, when I did the festival in New Mexico, we booked Lee Rocker of the Stray Cats, and he was coming into town and his plane had arrived late. And this is a town that is like a small Route 66 town. And the only things you can do are fly into Albuquerque or Amarillo. So you have a couple hours to drive. So they flew into Amarillo, I think, him and his band, and they were driving into town. They were going to a hotel room and they were changing and stuff. They were literally like 3 hours before they had to perform. Like, it was a very tight turnaround. And they got to the hotel and it's a very classic Route 66 strip of hotels and diners, and some have been restored. Some of them are closed, but it's like you can kind of see the old signs and everything. It's a beautiful little strip. It's definitely like a great tourist attraction to like stop and take photos. And there's some really great hotels, but they were staying at this one hotel, the Motel Safari, and across the street was the Blue Swallow. And somebody had called in a bomb threat to the Blue Swallow Hotel. Ooh. An hour before they were supposed to perform. So the police closed down with the SWAT team and everything, the whole section, like the whole 2-block radius around the hotel. Well, we had to get Lee Rocker and his band out of the hotel and to the convention center to perform. And so we devised a plan with the owner of the hotel, because they weren't allowing any cars in, but people could walk out. So finally, after figuring it out and everything, we had the band walk out, carrying their instruments and stuff, walked like 2-block radius past the section that was closed down. And I just went and personally picked them up, just as I was just like, I'll just go get them and everything and bring them to convention center. And then the last time I saw, I booked Lee Rocker at Rockabillaque, and I made a point of saying, I'm like, hey, remember, there's no bomb threats this time. Like, you can get on stage just fine.
That's crazy.
It was really crazy, because it was like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm so sorry you came to town and there was a bomb threat. But yeah, we had to like sneak them out. Like, it was like, because nobody was supposed to really leave that. We did, because they weren't really even supposed to walk out. Like, everyone was supposed to stay in the section they were in, like the closed off area. But somehow I knew the owner of the motel, and they got him to, walk out and kind of like sneak around the side of the building or whatever, so that I could come around and pick them up like a couple blocks away. But but yeah, as far the bands, honestly, there's no diva. They're all pretty genuinely, even the biggest ones are genuinely just so like happy to be there and like give the best show, and thankful that people are doing these kind of events around the country, and and it's grown. If you think about the last like 5, when I started doing it, there was Viva Las Vegas, and there wasn't a lot of other like big events. And since I've started doing it, there's also Nashville Boogie, there's the the New England Shake Up, and then there's Viva East, and so it's like, it's all like grown and gotten so much bigger. And it's great that this culture is like thriving, and there's some people that are just like, oh, rockabilly, like who like, I didn't even know that was a thing anymore. Oh, I'm like, actually it's an international thing, and there's like thousands of bands, and there's festivals all over the world, and like thousands of people come to these events. And I was like, so yeah, it's pretty thriving. Like, just because it's not in your wheelhouse doesn't mean it's not happening, because it's out there. Like, it's definitely a big thing. So, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
And I'm excited to be a part of it too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that me and you got to, get connected, and you've been, you kicked ass at the PinUp contest. You've been doing all those great Facebook Lives. And I love that. I think that the community is very supportive of each other. And I think that's really, really great. And it really means a lot to me. Like, when bands come and they say we had the best time and all that, it means everything to me. Like, and, and I want not just the people coming to the event to have a blast. I want the bands to have a blast. I want the people that are, helping to put on the contest to have a great time too.
You want the whole experience for everyone.
Yeah. I want everyone to have I want it to be an event that I would go to and have a good time at. Like, I want, I want it to be an experience that people love. So, and I'm really glad I get to do it. So It's like, I consider myself pretty lucky. So
you are, and I'm lucky that you brought it to Florida. Not because of me, but because
we get to do it. And hopefully we get to do it next. Yeah, and hopefully we get to do it next year. I really hope so. So
yes. Now, do you have any questions for me?
I mean, nothing off the top of my head. Happy birthday again. Happy belated birthday. And I'm glad to have you be a part of Rockabilly Q. I think what you're doing is kick ass. So, and I love your lighting, and I need to get some light. I need to get my own little lighting for. I need to get backdrops, and if I start doing more of the online stuff, I need backdrops and special.
Well, I got tips for you if you ever need any. I'm self-taught, but I like to think that I've got it down packed almost.
No, you. I mean, I've seen when you first started doing this stuff. You've come a long way in like 6 months or 7 months. So yeah, it looks. I mean, you literally look like you're hosting like a professional. Like this is like it looks like you're on Sirius Radio right now. So, and I look like I'm in my bedroom. So.
I was asked. I went to work. There's a band that wants to hire me to style them because they want to try rockabilly, but they need help. So I went to test out, and they were amazed with my microphone because theirs was plastic and mine's is like real steel. And I was like, no, I'm really trying.
As you should. So, it's great. I love it.
I want to say thank you, Simon. Again, it means so much that you took the time to be on my podcast.
Of course, definitely.
And next week, I have Nikki. She runs a podcast called Magic Paratus. She's a traveler, content creator. She's located in Puerto Rico, so her content is bilingual. So I'm excited to have her. She's Puerto Rican, I'm Cuban, so I'm sure next week's episode is going to be Spanglish, just like one of my earlier episodes. So that's going to be exciting. And I want to say thank you all for tuning in to the end, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.